I'm Amanda, 35 years old. After years of supporting my husband's career, I was genuinely excited to attend a major event at his company. But then I froze. The name card at my seat read, "Worthless Trophy Wife." Laughter broke out around me. I turned, searching for support. But my husband just stood beside his boss and said nothing. In that moment, I knew everything had to change. And just 1 week later, the empire they were once so proud of began to collapse. By my own hands. 10 years ago, Mark and I met at the University of Illinois Library during finals week. He was this ambitious business major who couldn't sit still, always tapping his pen against his textbook while he studied. I was getting my master's in forensic accounting, and his constant drumming was driving me insane. "You know that rhythm you're tapping matches that annoying pop song, right?" I whispered. During one of his particularly loud percussion sessions, he looked up with this embarrassed grin that made my heart skip. "Sorry, I think better with background music, even imaginary background music. I'm Mark, Amanda, and I think better with complete silence, so we might have a problem." "Or the perfect partnership," he said, sliding his chair closer. "You handle the quiet concentration, I'll provide the creative energy." We talked until the library closed. Two broke students living on ramen noodles, both dreaming of changing the business world. Mark wanted to revolutionize corporate consulting, while I was fascinated by the stories hidden in financial statements, specifically the lies people tried to bury in the numbers. "Let's make a deal," I said, as we walked across the empty campus that night. "Whatever happens after graduation, we support each other completely. No competition, no jealousy, just pure partnership." "Business partners for life," he agreed, shaking my hand with mock formality. And for the first 5 years, we kept that promise completely. When Mark landed his first interview at a small consulting firm in downtown Chicago, we celebrated with $3 champagne and spent the entire night rehearsing answers to every possible question. I helped him research the company's client base and competitive position until he could discuss their business model better than some of their actual employees. "You're going to revolutionize their entire approach," I told him as he straightened his tie in our tiny bathroom mirror. "They'd be crazy not to hire you. And when you land your first major fraud case, we're upgrading to champagne that doesn't come in plastic bottles," he promised. My forensic accounting practice started at our kitchen table because office space was financially impossible. I specialized in fraud detection for smaller investment firms, helping them identify red flags that bigger companies might overlook or deliberately ignore. The work required meticulous attention to detail, countless hours analyzing SEC filings, cross-referencing executive compensation with company performance, building financial models that could predict trouble before it made headlines. Mark never complained about our apartment being transformed into a paper-covered investigation center. He'd bring me coffee at midnight and look over my shoulder at spreadsheets filled with numbers that meant nothing to him. "Catch any corporate criminals today?" he'd ask, rubbing my shoulders as I highlighted suspicious transaction patterns. "Actually, I think so," I said, one particularly productive evening. "This pharmaceutical company has been shuffling research costs between different subsidiaries to make their quarterly earnings look better. Their investors don't realize how much money they're actually losing on failed drug trials. That sounds like fraud. Not technically illegal, but definitely misleading. When the truth comes out, people are going to lose serious money." My report on that pharmaceutical company ended up saving my clients over $6 million when the stock price collapsed 8 months later. Financial journalists quoted my analysis, and suddenly my phone rang constantly with investors wanting to hire the consultant who'd predicted disaster while everyone else recommended buying. Mark was genuinely excited about my success during those days. At parties, he'd introduce me as the woman who takes down corrupt corporations from our kitchen table, and his pride was completely authentic. We were both building something meaningful, both contributing equally to our shared future. Mark's own career advanced rapidly through various consulting firms. He started as a junior analyst, moved into strategy consulting, then secured positions with increasing responsibility and impressive salary increases. I watched him develop confidence in boardrooms and master the political complexities of corporate consulting. "I got the senior director position," he announced one evening, practically vibrating with excitement. "At Pinnacle Consulting. It's a huge jump, but they specifically wanted someone with my background in digital transformation strategies. That's incredible. When do you start? 3 weeks. There's one complication. We need to relocate to New York. I know that means rebuilding your client base completely, but this opportunity could change everything for us. I didn't hesitate for even a moment. Of course we're moving. This is exactly what we've been working toward. Relocating meant sacrificing my established client relationships, but I believed completely in our partnership. I referred clients to competitors, terminated my office lease, and spent weeks researching New York's investment community to identify potential opportunities. The financial cost was substantial, but watching Mark excel in his new role felt worth every dollar lost. What I couldn't have predicted was how professional success would gradually alter the fundamental dynamic between us. The man who used to request my opinion on every decision started making choices independently. He'd return home discussing strategic initiatives and corporate restructuring. But when I'd offer perspectives based on my financial expertise, he'd smile politely and redirect the conversation. "The complexities are different at this level," became his standard response when I questioned business strategies that seemed risky from an investment standpoint. "This isn't comparable to your boutique consulting work." The shift accelerated dramatically when Catherine Morrison became his direct supervisor around our 5th wedding anniversary. Suddenly, every conversation included references to Catherine's innovative methodologies, her extensive industry connections, her visionary approach to corporate strategy. "She's absolutely brilliant," Mark would say, describing some presentation Catherine had delivered. "She approaches problems from angles that completely reframe the entire solution space." I tried being supportive, even suggesting we invite her for dinner. "She sounds like an incredible mentor. I'd love to meet the person who's contributed so much to your career development." "Catherine maintains an extremely demanding schedule," he said quickly. "High-level executive meetings, industry conferences, strategic planning sessions. She probably wouldn't have time for social gatherings." Despite never meeting her, Catherine's influence on our marriage intensified significantly. Mark began dismissing my professional expertise entirely, characterizing my work as specialized, compared to his comprehensive corporate responsibilities. The consultant who'd saved investors millions was suddenly too narrowly focused to understand real business strategy. But Catherine's genius extended beyond just influencing Mark's opinions. She orchestrated my exclusion from his professional world with surgical precision. Company events would be scheduled for dates when she knew I had client commitments. She'd send invitations for spouse-optional gatherings, then later mention how disappointed she was that I couldn't make it. "The other executives' wives are so involved in our company culture," she told Mark during one of their frequent phone calls, her voice clearly audible from the kitchen where I was preparing dinner. "Jennifer Chen brings homemade cookies to every event, and Michelle Rodriguez organized that wonderful charity drive. It really makes a difference when families are engaged." The message was clear. I was failing as a corporate wife by prioritizing my own work over Mark's company functions. Catherine would schedule team-building activities that explicitly excluded spouses, then make sure Mark came home with stories about how much fun everyone had. "Catherine organized this amazing escape room challenge for the leadership team," he'd say. "She's so creative about building camaraderie." Meanwhile, when other companies hosted spouse-inclusive events, Catherine would find reasons why Mark needed to skip them. "Catherine needs me to review the quarterly projections that night," became his standard excuse. Slowly but methodically, I was being erased from Mark's professional life, relegated to the role of the stay-at-home wife who couldn't quite keep up with the ambitious corporate crowd. My breaking point came during a phone conversation I accidentally overheard. Mark was in his home office with the door cracked open, and Catherine's voice carried clearly through the house. "You have so much potential, Mark. I see you moving into senior leadership within the next 2 years. But you need to surround yourself with people who understand that level of ambition, people who can match your drive and vision." "Amanda's very supportive of my career," Mark said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Of course she is, in her own way. But support and true partnership are different things. You need someone who can elevate your thinking, challenge your assumptions, push you toward excellence. Someone who operates at your level." I stood frozen in our hallway, listening to Catherine systematically dismantle my marriage, while positioning herself as a solution to Mark's professional and personal needs. That night, I started keeping detailed notes of every interaction, every comment, every subtle manipulation. As someone trained in pattern recognition, I finally understood exactly what Catherine was doing. She wasn't just undermining my relationship with Mark. She was conducting a hostile takeover of my marriage using the same strategic thinking she applied to corporate acquisitions. The most painful part was watching Mark fall for it completely, interpreting her calculated manipulation as mentorship and professional development. The notebook filled with Catherine's manipulations was hidden in my desk drawer when Mark exploded through our front door on that Tuesday evening in March, practically bouncing off the walls with an energy I hadn't seen since his college days. "Pack your best dress," he announced, tossing his briefcase onto the couch with uncharacteristic carelessness. "We're going to the Pinnacle Consulting annual gala next Saturday." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing quarterly reports for a potential client. "We're going to what now?" "The company gala. Catherine specifically insisted you come this year," she said. "It's time Amanda experienced the full Pinnacle culture." Mark was practically glowing as he loosened his tie. "This is huge, Amanda. The gala is where they announce major promotions, where the real networking happens. Catherine wouldn't have suggested you attend unless something big was coming." That word "insisted" sent ice water through my veins. After months of strategic exclusion, Catherine suddenly wanted me at the company's most important social event. My analytical mind immediately started calculating possibilities. None of them good. "She insisted," I repeated carefully. She pulled me aside after the executive meeting today and said, "Mark, it's time Amanda joined us for the gala. I have a feeling this year will be especially memorable for both of you." He was rifling through our closet now, pushing hangers aside with unusual enthusiasm. "Where's that navy blue dress? The one you wore to our anniversary dinner at Marcello's 2 years ago." I blinked in surprise. Mark hadn't commented on my clothing choices in months, yet he remembered a specific dress from 2 years ago. "It's in the back, behind the winter coats." "Perfect. You looked incredible in that dress. Catherine mentioned she's looking forward to seeing you in something elegant." The week leading up to the gala felt surreal. Mark was suddenly attentive in ways that felt almost nostalgic, like he was trying to recapture some version of us that had existed before Catherine's influence poisoned everything. He brought me coffee in the mornings without being asked about my consulting work with genuine interest, and even suggested we practice dancing in our living room. "I want everything to be perfect Saturday night," he said, spinning me awkwardly around our coffee table. "This could be the moment that changes our entire future." Despite every instinct screaming warnings, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe Catherine had realized that excluding me was counterproductive. Maybe she'd decided that accepting me was better than fighting me. Maybe this was her olive branch, her way of acknowledging that I was an important part of Mark's life, whether she liked it or not. I threw myself into preparation with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in months. The expensive salon downtown gave me a manicure that cost more than I usually spent on groceries. A professional stylist arranged my hair in an elegant updo that made me feel sophisticated and confident. I spent hours researching current consulting industry trends, memorizing details about Pinnacle's recent acquisitions and strategic partnerships. "Tell me about the blockchain integration project," I practiced in front of our bathroom mirror. I read the preliminary market analysis was quite promising. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was stepping back into my professional identity. The woman who used to command respect in boardrooms was still there, just buried under months of being dismissed and diminished. I was ready to show Mark's colleagues that I was more than just a supportive spouse. I was an intelligent partner with valuable insights and professional credibility. I was completely wrong. The Grandview Hotel lived up to every description Mark had given me. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors, and servers in crisp uniforms carried champagne flutes through crowds of elegantly dressed executives and their spouses. Walking through the lobby in my navy dress and carefully styled hair, I felt confident and prepared. But the moment we entered the main ballroom, something shifted. Mark's hand on my back felt performative rather than supportive, like he was playing a role rather than naturally escorting his wife. His eyes immediately found Catherine across the room, and I watched his posture change from relaxed to alert. "There she is," he murmured, and I couldn't tell if he meant it as information or anticipation. Catherine approached us like a queen holding court, her silver dress catching the chandelier light with every calculated step. Her smile was theater bright, visible from across the room. "Amanda, you actually came." The emphasis on actually was subtle but unmistakable, designed to sound surprised and delighted, while implying that my attendance was somehow unexpected or uncertain. "Thank you for suggesting I join you," I replied, keeping my voice pleasant and professional. "Well, Mark deserves to have his +1 here for such a special evening." The phrase +1 was delivered with surgical precision, reducing me from wife and partner to accessory in front of a room full of Mark's colleagues. I felt Mark's hand tighten slightly on my back, but he said nothing to correct Catherine's characterization. "Let me show you to your table," Catherine continued, her voice carrying enough volume to ensure nearby executives could hear every word. "I made sure you were seated with some lovely people who I'm sure will have fascinating things to discuss with you." She guided us through the ballroom like a hostess showing guests to their designated spots. Other couples were finding their seats, checking place cards, settling in for what was clearly going to be an elaborate evening of corporate celebration. "Here we are," Catherine announced, gesturing toward an elegantly set round table near the center of the room. "Mark, you're right here next to me at the head table, of course." My stomach dropped. "We're not sitting together?" "Oh, didn't Mark explain? Executives sit at the leadership table. Spouses have their own seating arrangements." Catherine's tone was apologetic but firm, as if this was standard protocol rather than another strategic separation. I looked at Mark, expecting him to object, or at least appear surprised by this arrangement. Instead, he was already moving toward the head table, his attention focused on Catherine's explanation of the evening's agenda. "Your place card should be right around here somewhere," Catherine said, scanning the elegant table settings with theatrical concern. I began checking the small cream-colored cards at each place setting, reading names of people I didn't recognize. Jennifer Walsh, Marketing Coordinator; David Kim, Regional Sales Manager; Susan Chen, Executive Assistant. And then I found mine. The card was identical to all the others, cream cardstock with elegant calligraphy in deep blue ink, but instead of my name, it read "Worthless Trophy Wife." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I stared at the card, reading it again to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The professional presentation somehow made it worse. This wasn't a spontaneous insult scrawled in anger. This was a carefully planned humiliation, designed and executed with the same attention to detail as the rest of the evening's arrangements. The laughter started as a ripple and built to a wave. The other people at the table had seen the card, and their reactions ranged from shocked gasps to poorly concealed amusement. I heard someone whisper, "Oh my goodness, did you see what her place card says?" "Still playing the devoted wife after all this time," a woman's voice said behind me, followed by more laughter. The sound grew louder as more people noticed the commotion and came over to see what was causing such a stir. Within moments, half the ballroom was either staring at me or actively laughing at the elegant calligraphy that had reduced me to a punchline. I turned to Mark, expecting anger, outrage, or at minimum, some sign that he was as shocked by this cruelty as I was. Instead, I found him staring at his water glass, like it contained the mysteries of the universe. His face was carefully neutral, his shoulders tense with what I realized wasn't surprise but discomfort at being caught in the middle of something he'd known was coming. "Mark," I said quietly, giving him one last chance to defend me, to show some sign that the man I'd married was still somewhere inside the stranger wearing his face. He couldn't meet my eyes. His silence stretched across the laughter and whispered comments, speaking louder than any words could have. In that moment, I understood with crystalline clarity that this wasn't just Catherine's masterpiece of public destruction. Mark was a willing participant in my humiliation. The silence wasn't shock. It was complicity. The man I'd supported through every career challenge, the partner I'd sacrificed my professional ambitions for, the husband I'd loved and trusted for 9 years, couldn't find the courage to defend me against the cruelest public humiliation I'd ever experienced. I looked around the ballroom at the faces surrounding me, some laughing, some uncomfortable, all witnessing my complete and utter destruction. But as I stood there holding that place card, something else crystallized inside me. The woman they were laughing at, the worthless trophy wife, had skills they couldn't imagine, and Catherine Morrison had just made the biggest mistake of her carefully calculated career. I walked toward the exit with my head held high, and as I passed the CEO who was chuckling at Catherine's brilliant joke, I leaned close to his ear. "Mr. Peterson, if I were you, I'd check those offshore consulting fees in your Q3 reports. Some very interesting patterns there." His face went from amused to alert in seconds. "What kind of patterns?" "The kind that make the SEC very unhappy. Have a wonderful evening." The taxi driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror during the silent ride home, probably wondering why a woman in an expensive dress was sitting in his back seat with tears streaming down her face. I didn't speak until we pulled into my driveway, and even then I could only manage a whispered "thank you" as I handed him cash. Mark's car wasn't in the driveway. He was probably still at the gala, probably celebrating with Catherine and the colleagues who'd found my humiliation so entertaining. The house felt different when I walked through the front door, smaller somehow, like it belonged to someone else's life. I spent Sunday in bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of Saturday night. The laughter, Mark's silence, the CEO's smirk when I whispered my threat about those financial reports. By Sunday evening, something had crystallized inside me. The woman they'd humiliated wasn't worthless or just a trophy wife. She was dangerous, and they had no idea what they'd unleashed. Monday morning, I sat in my home office staring at my laptop like it was a time machine, capable of transporting me back to the person I used to be. The screen was black, reflecting my face back at me, but I could see beyond that reflection to the woman who'd once saved pension funds from fraudulent investments. My fingers moved across the keyboard with muscle memory I didn't realize I'd retained. Password after password came back to me as I accessed databases I'd maintained but barely touched in months. Bloomberg Terminal, SEC Edgar database, corporate filing platforms. The subscriptions I'd kept active just in case suddenly felt like the smartest money I'd ever spent. The first thing I opened was Pinnacle's most recent 10K filing. As I scrolled through pages of corporate legal language and financial tables, something I hadn't felt in years began burning in my chest. Professional hunger, the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of seeing patterns that others missed. "Let's see what you've been hiding, Catherine." Within an hour, I found the first irregularity: executive stock option grants that were dated suspiciously close to major client announcements that would boost share prices. The timing wasn't technically illegal, but it showed a pattern of executives positioning themselves to profit from information before it became public. I pulled up Catherine's employment records through public filings. Her signature appeared on documents approving these option grants. She'd been at Pinnacle for 18 months, and in that time, the questionable practices had accelerated dramatically. My coffee grew cold as I dug deeper into quarterly earnings reports. Revenue recognition that pushed the boundaries of accounting standards. Consulting fees to shell companies that trace back to offshore accounts. Development costs that seem to disappear and reappear in different categories without adequate explanation. "Sloppy," I muttered, highlighting another discrepancy. Overconfident and sloppy. By Tuesday afternoon, I had enough material to fill a regulatory complaint, but a complaint would take months to investigate, and I wanted faster results. I needed a different approach. The anonymous investor forum post took me 3 hours to craft. I chose the username Forensic Watcher 2024 and wrote an analysis that would be impossible for serious investors to ignore. Red flags at Pinnacle Consulting, a deep dive into concerning financial patterns. I included charts showing the correlation between executive stock transactions and company announcements, graphs illustrating the unusual timing of revenue recognition, tables comparing Pinnacle's accounting practices to industry standards. Everything was documented with precise citations to public filings and regulatory guidelines. The post went live Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., time to catch investors before market open. By noon, it had been shared across 3 major investment forums and cited in 2 financial blogs. Wednesday evening brought the first surprise, an email to a secure account I'd created for the anonymous posts. "Whoever you are, thank you. I've been suspicious of Pinnacle's numbers for months, but didn't have the expertise to document it properly. Your analysis is spot on. There's more where that came from if you're interested." A concerned insider. The attached documents made my pulse quicken. Internal emails discussing ways to optimize quarterly reporting, meeting notes about delaying certain expense recognitions, Most damaging of all, a thread where Catherine explicitly discussed timing announcements to maximize the impact on stock price around executive option grants. We can shift the development costs to next quarter and announce the beta release this Friday, one email read. That should give the stock a nice bump right before the option grants vest. CM. The response was even more damning. Perfect. The board won't question the accounting treatment if the results look good. Internal reply. Thursday brought another bombshell. Someone had forwarded me a screenshot from Pinnacle's internal Slack channel, posted Saturday night during the gala. Catherine, did you guys see Amanda's face when she found her place card? Priceless. I can't believe you actually did it, savage. Mark said she needed to understand her place. Mission accomplished. She won't be bothering us with her professional insights anymore. The screenshot was timestamped 11:47 p.m. Saturday, less than 2 hours after I'd left the gala. Catherine had been bragging about humiliating me while I was crying in a taxi. I saved the screenshot and added it to my growing file. The pattern was becoming clear. Catherine wasn't just manipulative in her personal relationships. She was reckless and arrogant in her professional conduct too. Friday morning, I published a follow-up post incorporating the new evidence. This one was titled Culture and Conduct, When Leadership Failure Extends Beyond Numbers. The response was immediate and explosive. Financial journalists started calling Pinnacle's corporate communications department. Investment analysts began downgrading their stock recommendations. Regulatory bodies opened preliminary inquiries. I watched it all unfold from my home office, sipping coffee and feeling more alive than I had in months. Every news alert, every dropping stock price point, every analyst comment questioning Pinnacle's practices felt like validation of everything Catherine and Mark had dismissed about my capabilities. By Friday afternoon, Pinnacle Consulting's stock price had dropped 12%. The company issued a statement about addressing recent concerns raised by market analysts and announced they were conducting a thorough internal review of accounting practices. I knew that internal review would find exactly what I'd already documented. Catherine's fingerprints were all over the questionable decisions, and her arrogance had left a paper trail that would be impossible to explain away. The anonymous whistleblower emails were flooding in now. Current employees, former employees, vendors who'd witnessed questionable practices. Everyone wanted to share what they knew with the person who'd finally spoken up about Pinnacle's problems. One message particularly caught my attention. I'm a junior accountant at Pinnacle. Catherine Morrison has been pressuring our department to manipulate quarter-end numbers for months. I've been documenting everything because I was scared of losing my job if I reported it. Your post gave me the courage to contact the SEC directly. Thank you for giving us a voice. Saturday evening, exactly 1 week after the gala, I poured myself a glass of wine and reviewed the week's accomplishments. Pinnacle Consulting was under investigation by 3 regulatory bodies. Their stock price was in freefall. Catherine's professional reputation was crumbling as journalists dug deeper into the culture she'd created. The woman they'd called a worthless trophy wife had triggered the biggest corporate scandal in the consulting industry that year. And I was just getting started. Sunday morning brought the phone call I'd been waiting for. My secure line rang at 7:23 a.m., and the voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Chen, a financial journalist from the Wall Street Journal. I'm trying to reach Forensic Watcher 2024, he said. I know this is unconventional, but your Pinnacle analysis has caught significant attention. We'd like to expand on your findings for a front-page story. What kind of expansion? We've independently verified most of your documentation. Our investigation team has uncovered additional evidence that supports your conclusions about questionable accounting practices. We want to run a comprehensive exposé, but we need to ensure our source material is bulletproof. 20 minutes later, I'd anonymously provided Marcus with additional documentation that would make his article unassailable. The Wall Street Journal's credibility would amplify my findings beyond anything I could accomplish through forum posts. Monday's headline read, Consulting Giant Pinnacle Under Federal Investigation for Accounting Irregularities. The article detailed everything I'd discovered plus information their investigative team had gathered independently. Catherine's name appeared 17 times, each mention more damaging than the last. By 10 a.m., Pinnacle's stock had dropped another 18%. Trading was halted twice as sell orders flooded the market. I watched the chaos unfold from my home office, sipping coffee that tasted like victory. The first news alert about Catherine personally arrived at 11:47 a.m. Pinnacle executive Catherine Morrison placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I screenshotted the notification and saved it in a folder labeled Justice Served. Mark's key turned in the front door at 2 p.m., 3 hours earlier than usual. His footsteps on our hardwood floors sounded heavy, defeated. I heard him drop his briefcase by the entrance, something he never did. "Amanda." His voice carried a vulnerability I hadn't heard in years. "In the office," I called back, not looking up from my laptop where I was tracking Pinnacle's continued stock decline. He appeared in my doorway, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, his expensive suit wrinkled. "We need to talk," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk without invitation. "About what?" "About Catherine, about the investigation, about everything that's happening at work." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know how much you've heard, but it's bad, really bad." I minimized my browser window and gave him my full attention. "What kind of bad?" "The SEC is launching a formal investigation. The FBI seized documents from Catherine's office this morning. There are rumors about criminal charges." He looked at me with desperate eyes. "I've been working with Catherine for 2 years, Amanda. If they find evidence of intentional fraud, anyone associated with her decisions could be implicated." "That sounds serious." "It is serious. My career could be over. Everything we've built together could disappear." He leaned forward, reaching for my hand across the desk. "I need your analytical expertise. You're the smartest person I know when it comes to financial investigations. Could you help me understand what they might be looking for?" The irony was breathtaking. The man who'd dismissed my professional insights for months was now begging for the expertise he'd called narrow and small scale. "Why would you need my help? Doesn't Catherine have everything under control?" Mark's laugh was bitter. "Catherine's completely falling apart. She's blaming everyone except herself, claiming she was just following industry standards. But some of the documentation, Amanda, I think she might have been manipulating numbers deliberately. That would be securities fraud." "I know what it would be," his voice cracked with stress. "I'm scared, Amanda. For the first time in my career, I'm genuinely terrified about my professional future." I studied his face, seeing real fear behind the desperation. Part of me felt sympathy for the man I'd once loved unconditionally, but a larger part felt cold satisfaction at watching his world crumble, the same way mine had at that gala. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Help me distance myself from Catherine's decisions, review the documents I was involved with, and help me understand which ones might look problematic to investigators." He paused, swallowing hard. "I know I haven't been the best husband lately. I know I haven't appreciated your professional skills the way I should have. But we're a team, right? Partners for life." The words he'd spoken 9 years ago in that university parking lot felt hollow now, tainted by years of dismissal and culminating in his silence during my public humiliation. "When did you last consider us partners, Mark?" He blinked, clearly unprepared for the question. "What do you mean?" "When did you last ask for my opinion on something important? When did you last value my professional expertise? When did you last defend me when someone attacked my credibility?" His face went pale as understanding dawned. "Amanda, if this is about the gala..." "It's about everything, Mark. The gala was just the final confirmation of what we'd become." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder I'd been preparing for this conversation. Inside were copies of apartment listings, consultations with divorce attorneys, and financial statements showing exactly how much my consulting business could generate if I focused on it full-time. "What is this?" he asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. "My exit strategy. I've been rebuilding my professional network while watching your precious mentor destroy her career through her own arrogance." I handed him the top document, a consulting contract with a hedge fund worth more than his annual salary. 3 former clients want to hire me full-time. My reputation for integrity and analytical precision never disappeared, Mark. I just buried it to support a husband who stopped seeing my value. His hands shook as he read the contract terms. "You're leaving me. I'm saving myself. There's a difference. But Catherine's investigation, my career, everything's falling apart. Catherine's investigation exists because someone with my skills decided to examine her practices closely. Her career is ending because she was sloppy and arrogant. Your career is in jeopardy because you chose loyalty to a corrupt mentor over respect for your wife. Mark stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment he began connecting dots he should have connected years ago. You know something about this investigation, don't you? I closed my laptop and stood up. I know that truth has a way of surfacing when someone with the right expertise decides to dig for it. Amanda, what did you do? I reminded everyone that the worthless trophy wife from the gala actually has a PhD in forensic accounting and a decade of experience exposing corporate fraud. I walked to our bedroom and began pulling clothes from my closet with the same precision I'd once used to analyze fraudulent financial statements. Mark followed me, watching as I methodically folded clothes into suitcases. You can't just leave. We can work through this, can't we? When did you plan to start respecting my professional expertise? After Catherine's criminal trial? After your career recovers from association with a fraud? After you finally decide I'm worth defending? He sat on our bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I know I messed up. I know I should have said something at the gala, but Catherine said it was just a joke. That you'd understand the humor. Catherine told you about the place card in advance. It wasn't a question. Mark's silence confirmed what I'd suspected since that night. She showed you the card before the event, didn't she? You knew I was walking into that humiliation, and you said nothing. She said it would be funny. She said you'd laugh about it later. Did you really believe that? Or did you just not care enough to stop it? He couldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. I zipped my suitcase and headed for the door. On our kitchen counter, I left a note with words I'd been composing for weeks. Mark, it's not the insult that broke us. It's the silence that followed. The woman you dismissed is the same woman who just brought down your mentor's empire. Maybe next time you'll remember that underestimating people has consequences. Amanda, walking out of that house, felt like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. My phone buzzed with another news alert. Former Pinnacle executive Catherine Morrison under criminal investigation for securities fraud. The apartment I found was everything our house had never been. Bright, clean, and entirely mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room overlooked the Manhattan skyline, and morning sunlight streamed across hardwood floors that bore no memory of arguments or silent dinners. Moving in took exactly one afternoon. 9 years of marriage, and everything I truly wanted fit into my car in 6 boxes. I hung my diplomas on the wall of my new home office. The PhD in forensic accounting from Northwestern, the Certified Fraud Examiner certificate, the awards from industry organizations that had recognized my work before I'd buried it to support Mark's ambitions. Welcome to your new life, Amanda, I said to my reflection in the bathroom mirror that first night. The woman staring back at me looked different already, shoulders straighter, eyes clearer, mouth set in determined lines, rather than the apologetic softness I'd worn for years. Tuesday morning brought the phone call that would reshape everything. Patricia Morrison from Blackstone Financial had been trying to reach me for 3 days. Amanda, I've been following your work for years, especially your recent analysis of the consulting sector irregularities, she said, without preamble. We need someone with your expertise as our new director of forensic research. The compensation package starts at $180,000 plus bonuses tied to fund performance. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. You want to hire me full-time? We want to build an entire research division around your analytical approach. Your reputation for uncovering problems before they hit headlines is exactly what our investors need in this market. 3 weeks later, I walked into Blackstone's glass-walled offices wearing a charcoal suit that fit perfectly and confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. My business cards read Amanda Mitchell, Director of Forensic Research, and seeing my name in elegant lettering felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost years ago. My first assignment was evaluating a biotech company as a potential acquisition target. Within hours of diving into their financial statements, I found patterns that reminded me of my early consulting days. Revenue recognition that seemed designed to impress rather than inform. Research costs that move between categories without clear justification. This company is cooking their books, I told Patricia during our afternoon meeting. Their Phase 2 trial results don't justify the revenue projections, and they're hiding development failures in subsidiary accounting. How certain are you? Certain enough to stake my reputation on it. I slid my analysis across her desk. Give me 1 more week to document everything. And you'll have a report that saves your fund millions, Patricia smiled. This is exactly why we hired you. Working again in a professional environment where my expertise was valued felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. My colleagues treated me as an equal partner in complex financial decisions. During strategy meetings, people leaned forward when I spoke, rather than politely waiting for me to finish. My insights shaped investment decisions worth tens of millions of dollars. Amanda's analysis just saved us from a catastrophic pharmaceutical investment, Patricia announced during our monthly partners meeting. Her due diligence uncovered accounting irregularities that would have cost the fund approximately $40 million. The applause felt genuine, earned, real. For the first time in years, I was being recognized for the work I actually did, rather than dismissed as someone who played around with numbers. The Google alert about Catherine arrived on a Thursday morning. While I was reviewing quarterly reports, former consulting executive Catherine Morrison indicted on federal securities fraud charges. The accompanying photograph showed a woman I barely recognized. Gone were the designer suits and commanding presence that had once intimidated me. Catherine stood outside the federal courthouse, wearing flat shoes and a cheap blazer, her shoulders hunched in defeat. The woman who had built her career on projecting invincibility looked small and ordinary. The charges were serious: falsifying investor disclosures, manipulating earnings reports, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud. Each count carried potential prison time and guaranteed professional destruction. I read the article twice, feeling something I hadn't expected, not triumph, but quiet satisfaction. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through simple exposure of truth. Catherine's arrogance and sloppy practices had created the evidence that brought her down. I'd simply illuminated what was already there. The comment section was brutal but predictable. Isn't this the executive who humiliated that woman at the company gala? Karma has an interesting sense of timing. Another comment made me pause. I worked at Pinnacle during the Catherine era. She created a toxic culture where bullying was disguised as high-performance standards. Glad someone finally held her accountable. Catherine had built her entire professional identity on manipulation and cruelty, and now that foundation was crumbling completely. The same strategic thinking she'd used to undermine my marriage had made her overconfident in her financial misconduct. 6 months after leaving Mark, I realized the transformation was complete. The woman who had once been dismissed as a worthless trophy wife was now leading investment decisions for one of the city's most respected funds. My analysis influenced portfolio strategies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Industry publications quoted my research, and other financial firms tried to recruit me monthly, but the professional success was only part of the story. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based entirely on my own preferences and priorities. My apartment reflected my taste, rather than compromises with someone else's vision. My schedule revolved around work I found challenging rather than supporting someone else's ambitions. Friday evenings, I'd sit on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights twinkle below and marveling at how quiet life could be without constant tension and dismissal. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden criticisms. No more wondering if my professional insights would be valued or dismissed. No more walking on eggshells around someone else's fragile ego. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, requiring only my signature to make official what had been emotionally finished months ago. Mark had included a handwritten note that I read once before filing it away. Amanda, I know I can never undo the damage I caused. You were always the stronger partner in our marriage. I just wasn't smart enough to see it until it was too late. I hope you find the respect and recognition you deserve. Mark. The apology felt hollow after years of dismissal, but I appreciated the acknowledgement. Mark was facing his own consequences: unemployment, professional disgrace by association with Catherine, and the loss of a wife whose expertise could have saved his career if he'd bothered to value it. As I signed the divorce papers, I thought about the couple we'd once been. 2 ambitious students with $3 champagne and unlimited dreams. That partnership had been real, but it had also been fragile. When success and outside influence tested our foundation, we discovered it wasn't strong enough to survive. But from the ashes of that failed marriage, something better had emerged. Not revenge or vindication, but resurrection. The woman Catherine had tried to diminish was thriving in ways neither she nor Mark could have imagined. 1 year later, I was sitting in my corner office at Blackstone, overlooking the same city where Catherine had once tried to diminish me. On my desk sat an invitation to speak at the National Conference on Corporate Fraud Detection. The topic: Patterns of Deception, How Personal Character Reflects Professional Conduct. My phone rang. Marcus Chen from the Wall Street Journal. Amanda, we're doing a follow-up piece on the Pinnacle scandal. Catherine Morrison was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison yesterday. Any comments on the case that started with your anonymous analysis? I paused, thinking about the woman who had orchestrated my humiliation while systematically destroying her own career through arrogance. Justice has a way of surfacing when truth is given the proper platform. Sometimes it takes expertise to recognize the patterns, but accountability always follows eventually. Sources say you were the key whistleblower who brought down Morrison's operation. Sources say many things. What matters is that Catherine Morrison's own actions created the evidence of fraud. The analysis simply connected the dots she left behind. After hanging up, I opened the news article about the sentencing. Catherine entering the federal courthouse in handcuffs. The same building where a year ago she'd been riding high on professional success, built on manipulation and cruelty. A text message popped up from an unknown number. Saw the news about Catherine Morrison. You probably don't remember me, but I was a server at the gala where she humiliated you. Watching karma catch up felt amazing. You're an inspiration to everyone who's been underestimated. Jenny, I smiled, thinking about chain reactions. One woman's cruelty exposed through another woman's expertise, inspiring others who had witnessed injustice. I opened my laptop and began typing my speech for the upcoming conference. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to talk about hidden strength, about women whose capabilities run deeper than surface appearances suggest, about the danger of underestimating people based on preconceptions. Hey everyone, I want to share something with you. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about recognizing your own worth when others refuse to see it. Catherine Morrison thought she'd destroyed me that night at the gala. Mark thought my expertise was a convenient hobby rather than a professional calling. They both learned an expensive lesson. Underestimating people has consequences. But the real lesson here is this: you don't need anyone else's permission to be brilliant. Your skills, your experience, your knowledge, those belong to you. When people try to diminish those gifts, that speaks to their insecurity, not your inadequacy. To every woman watching this who's been called too much or not enough, who's had their expertise dismissed or their ambitions minimized, you are exactly the right amount. Your intelligence threatens people who profit from your silence. Trust your instincts, document the patterns, build your evidence, and when the moment comes, and it will come, let the truth speak for itself. Because the woman they underestimate today might be the same woman who changes their world tomorrow. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And in the comments, tell me, what's the moment you realized your true strength? Remember, they can laugh at the place card, but they can't erase the expertise you've earned. Keep shining, brilliant ones. The truth always finds a way to surface.